Professor, without knowing precisely what the danger is, would you say it's time for our viewers to crack each other's heads open and feast on the goo inside?
Yes, I would, Ken.
Hey everyone, welcome to the PC Perspective Podcast. This is episode 579 being recorded Thursday, March 19th, 2020. I'm Jim Tannis.
I'm Jeremy Hellstrom. I'm Josh Walrath.
I'm Brett Van Sproonberg, trying to have 20% less snark in Sebastian's place.
It's going to be a tall order. Sebastian's not with us this week. He just had something come up at the last minute, so no worries there. He'll be back hopefully for the next show, but it's just the four of us to start the show. And because we're doing this on a Thursday night and poor Josh has to work, he's going to have to leave us about halfway through the show. So we'll try to get as much of that Josh Walrus love in as we can while we have him. But thanks for joining us, folks. We record these shows live Wednesdays or Thursdays. We tried to aim for Wednesdays, but we usually get something for you at some point during the week. And we do that at 10 p.m. Eastern. And that's, now that we're in daylight savings time, that works out to 2 a.m. UTC. So you go ahead and do the time zone calculation on your end to figure that out. And you can watch us live, join the chat at pcper.com/live. We also have the streams going out to YouTube and Twitch. And then, of course, you can always catch the podcast on demand, the video versions at YouTube and the audio versions at your favorite podcast app or on all the platforms. Just a quick update on the video podcast. I'm still struggling with these people. I don't want to name the platform because I think we might end up abandoning them, but it's been very difficult trying to get our podcast hosting migrated. The audio went over fine. The video's been a nightmare. I'm still working on it. So if you're on the video podcast feed, it's like 5 weeks behind at this point. But if you want those videos, head over to YouTube. You can grab them there. And then the audio is fine. Everything's working great with the audio, which is making this even more frustrating because it's like half great and half terrible. But anyway, thanks for joining us here. If you'd like to support our show, we normally we have a Patreon campaign going at patreon.com/PCPer. And the little gimmick we do here is if you become a new patron or up your pledge, change your name field. And before you make that change, and I'll get a notification here and I'll read whatever you put in that name field. Some people have also taken to just sending us a message after the donation has been made too, and that works. However you want to get your message to us works for us. And I almost forgot to make sure you join our mailing list. This is our live mailing list. We use this to send out a notification about an hour or so before we go live. So if you'd like to join us and we're on one of those unpredictable schedule weeks, you'll know exactly when to expect us. So I hope everyone's hanging in there. This was the first week, at least here, where the implications of the COVID-19 containment policies have really kicked in. It was the first week we had all our kids home from school. It's the week we started seeing businesses close. Some places obviously hit harder than others. So I hope everyone's hanging in there. I'm barely containing a 7-year-old second grader at home. It's been a nightmare. I was telling Jeremy before the show started that I imagine that when we all come out of this, that we'll all have much more appreciation for our school teachers. I certainly have. So I hope everyone's managing the best they can. And hopefully we can provide you with a little respite here for the next hour or two with some fun stuff to talk about. But let's jump in. We've got some news so I guess it was this was supposed to be GDC news. GDC was supposed to be happening now. It got canceled. And so we've had a series of live streams, digital releases. And to kick that off is the announcement by Microsoft of DirectX 12 Ultimate. The
ultimate in DirectX technology.
Yes, exactly. So what have we got here? Who wants to jump in and kind of tackle this for us? Nobody?
Yeah,
I'll do it. All right. So DirectX 12 Ultimate it's the next evolution of the DirectX API. I mean, I guess they could have gone to 13, but they wanted to to do the ultimate thing, the add-on excitement aspect to it. And basically what Microsoft's facing here, and sort of I think the driving force behind this is that we've got new technologies emerging in graphics, things like ray tracing, and we don't have a standardized implementation for this stuff.
Look at it as like stuff moving out of the drivers finally, and particular implementations of things. It's actually really good to see this moving to a standardized platform for things like ray tracing, variable rate shading. Those are the two that come to mind immediately, but that's going to be really helpful. And now I guess you can't fanboy over it as much anymore. I don't know. Maybe it'll stop some of that.
I wouldn't go.
That's just stupid to say. That's just dumb.
Yeah. Trolls.
Yeah, well, NVIDIA mentioned a couple of things that they do and no one else does.
Yes,
exactly. So, yeah. Sure, exactly. Yeah, and they don't do FreeSync. Oh, wait. Yeah, they do.
So yeah, this was a joint announcement basically. NVIDIA and AMD and Microsoft all kind of announced this together, highlighting their various features, and that's because, of course, having a standardized API for these kind of technologies is going to be hugely important as you look at the consoles, these new high-powered consoles, which are exclusively AMD, and then the desktop, which is a mix of NVIDIA, AMD, and now looking forward Intel as well. So it's important for Microsoft and these companies and developers to get on the same page and get these technologies, to a standardized, predictable way of addressing them, which is going to benefit everybody, I think. So we'll see more, I'm sure, of this from developers as they look to implement this, and as we'll talk about in a few minutes here, how the consoles will be implementing some of this stuff. Particularly ray tracing.
I think it's going to kill the RTX on jokes, though. I'm worried about that.
I mean, that's pretty well cemented in the popular culture now, isn't it? Don't you think?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
And there still will be RTX ray tracing versus DirectX ray tracing. So there, NVIDIA will still find a way to highlight its advantages in certain situations that.
Well, with all the games that adopted RTX, directly, I can see where that they're going to have a lot of error underneath that.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge amount.
Yes.
It's going to be really difficult to convince all the people that went all in on RTX to move over to the Microsoft, DirectX version.
Yeah. And what we will see, though, is we know, of course, that ray tracing does have an impact, a performance impact on NVIDIA's side.
Yeah.
What will that be going forward with DirectX ray tracing on AMD? How will their discrete GPUs handle it? How will the consoles handle it? That all really remains to be seen. That's going to be the interesting part of what will happen in this field in terms of who can deliver a better experience with those technologies. It's one thing to
talk
have
about that later with the Xbox.
Yes, we can. Well, does anyone else have any other thoughts on DirectX 12 Ultimate?
It seems really designed around Navi 2. Especially the new stuff, which may not spell great things for NVIDIA, but they went one way, and the ray tracing that Microsoft implemented with DXR is quite another. And AMD does not have necessarily kind of an RTX unit like NVIDIA does, which is a giant matrixy making thing. I'm probably saying it wrong, but it's almost like soft ray tracing using shaders, but it's more than that. And so it's going to be interesting to hear what developers have to say. Who's going to develop and put ray tracing on these, Xbox Series X and the PS5 when they eventually come out later this year and early next. And what launch titles they have? Is it going to be a couple of years before we see DXR stuff? Are they? Is Microsoft really hammering on some of these other studios to implement this type of ray tracing earlier? We don't know any of that, and we don't know any kind of the the performance impact of this, especially when you've got 60 frames per second at 4K is what they're kind of aiming at. I don't know. I mean, does AMD have an answer to DLSS?
Yeah, sort of.
Well, they do. Well, do they want one? I mean, is the question. Was DLSS? It was a stopgap, really, and because the technology wasn't there at the highest level of graphics, just to do pure ray tracing without having to.
Yeah.
But
Boy, it's handy in many, many instances, and I've run into DLSS stuff, and it looks pretty similar if it's well done. And yeah, it's like you enable that down sampling scaling in Quake 2 RTX, and it's like a whole different experience in terms of smoothness and what you can do when you run at 3440 by 1440 with a reasonable RTX card. It is kind of night and day when you turn on that DLSS type functionality, and you really can't tell much of a difference. I mean, I think corner cases, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say, I think what you said, the key there is when it's done right, and I think we saw so many examples of it not done right to start that it soured my impression on it, because we saw some Port Royale demos that 3D Mark benchmark at CES 2 years ago now. And that looked great. And then we saw it in certain games, and it did not look good, at least to begin with. So seeing that improve, I guess, is one aspect to follow. But yeah, we'll see this. So this is the new standard DirectX 12 Ultimate. You'll see it on video cards, on games, on consoles. They're basically saying, this is this version, this edition of like the Nintendo seal of approval. If you see this, that this is going to support all the latest technologies, all the latest graphics technologies at an acceptable level. So we'll see how that goes. But sort of tied into this is that we got also this past week, we got two major updates on the technical specs for the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. And these are the new big consoles. They're both being powered by AMD. We had gotten some teasers, like we knew that the Xbox was going to be targeting a 12 teraflop performance rating for the GPU, and that the PlayStation would be, I think it was 10 point something. And then we got all the details finally confirmed to us through a couple of live streams from these companies. And Eurogamer was in on it. Eurogamer, and was it Austin Evans, the tech YouTuber Austin Evans, had exclusives with Microsoft to unveil this stuff. Here's from Eurogamer. This is their comparison chart, and we can kind of take a look here at it's very interesting, because they're using the same basic platform, but these two consoles are implementing it very, very differently. And the way I heard it was Microsoft's going wide and slow, and Sony's going narrow and fast. But what do you think, Josh, about what we know now about how these new consoles will use Zen 2 and RDNA 2?
They're in many ways they're very similar. I mean, they use a lot of the same technology from AMD, but at the same time, they've both diverged quite significantly in certain places. One thing that they do have in common is they both have a 4K Blu-ray drive, so optical media still on
Lives.
top.
Yes,
it does, for another day. Otherwise, you're looking at 8 cores and up to 16 threads. I think that Xbox is being a little bit more developer friendly by locking down the speed of their processor and GPU. While Sony, on the other hand, they're having variable frequency that, you can, if it's a less demanding physics type game, then you're going to get faster CPU. And I think that in terms of development, I would rather have concrete targets to aim for, rather than, oh, hey, if we do this, this, and this, we can maybe get some more performance out of here. But, it's just when you're dealing with boost clocks, you're eventually going to hit some thermal areas that they're going to drop. And, I think that Microsoft kind of aiming for a more solid implementation, that there's less leeway and less guessing for the developers. I wouldn't say 1.8 gigahertz is slow for a graphics clock, especially when you're dealing with 52 CUs. That's a pretty beefy amount of graphics. And, Sony is going a little bit less, 36 CUs, but they're clocking it a lot higher. And it's kind of, when you look back and forth at this, you kind of get the impression that Xbox and Microsoft were really not happy being on the short end of the performance stick in the last generation. I mean, it wasn't until the Xbox One X came out that we saw clocks improved where it could be, more competitive with Sony. But, PS4 right off the bat was a more powerful SoC. And so going to Zen 2 cores, that's huge. Navi 2, again, huge. You're just going to get so much better overall performance. It's kind of like when the Xbox 360 was released way back in, 2004?
I think it was
2005? I can't remember.
Yeah, 2005.
But when it was released, it was right up there with the best PC in terms of overall real performance. And we're kind of hitting that same thing where if you're, they of course didn't tell us the prices of this, but I would expect that you're looking at a $600 piece of equipment with the Series X. I don't know about PlayStation 5, but Series X, I would guess around $600 with that entire thing, because it's got 1 terabyte NVMe drive. It's got the 4K Blu-ray. The design is really interesting. You've got the expansion with 1 terabyte of another NVMe that's kind of specialized that Seagate's doing for them. But when the other thing that really sticks out between the two is the memory bus, and make that 2 things, and I/O. So Microsoft has a split memory bus that 10 gigs of memory running at 560 gigs per second, and then another 6 gig of memory running at a slower 336. And we don't have all the details on how they're going to split that up in terms of OS and what the game can use and how much graphics can use. But Sony has, one unified 16 gig running it right in between 448 gigs. I/O bandwidth is going to be significantly improved on Sony, but it's also going to be, a huge jump for even just Xbox, because previously they were all pretty much running, slow spinning hard drives that gave you 50 to 100 megabytes per second of throughput. And now we are on these NVMe, PCIe Express type implementations where, Xbox in theory, I mean, if they did a SATA 6, not SATA 6, but PCIe 4.0 implementation with the NVMe, they get up to 5 gigs, right up there with PlayStation. But as it is, it's still, both of these are massive jumps up in terms of I/O from previous generation consoles, except for those people who would do, SSD hard drives, and they'd swap that in and they'd get better load times and whatnot. This is going to be such a advantage for developers, because I guess when they were going through load screens with like Spider-Man, which was a really lovely game, you'd go into like a subway and you'd ride the subway to get to the next spot, and that really is just a way to kind of keep you entertained as they're loading all of this data into memory to flesh out the world that you're going to be swinging around in. And a lot of the kind of tricky implementations that they've done to try to hide that from users, they're not going to have to do that, or they have to do it in a way that is, less restrictive and easier for developers. And so having this amount of I/O is going to really expand game worlds and the user experience, just because you're not going to be sitting there waiting on a loading screen. You got a little bar that moves across and you're holding your controller, sitting there slack-jawed. It's going to be better for you. So yeah, there's so much more CPU performance, graphics performance. Again, they're aiming at 60 frames per second of 4K, and you've got ray tracing support. I mean, just an amazing jump in technology from the previous generation to this one, and it's going to be fun to see, because I bought an Xbox One S a couple of years back that I really wanted to be kind of more of a media station, and it's been fantastic at that. I mean, it's got the 4K Blu-ray. You can link to Hulu, Amazon, Plex, everybody, Netflix, and you don't need the Xbox Gold thing anymore like you used to. At least I thought you had to used to be able to do a lot of streaming stuff. And so it's a great piece of equipment that does all kinds of things without having a PC in your living room. And it's supported by Microsoft, and you don't have to worry about all this other garbage. Like the last time I had a PC, for an HTPC that I'd always have to update the Blu-ray play software, and they were so crazy about not being unbreakable, even though it was constantly being broken, that it broke the user experience, because they eventually stopped supporting your old player, and you got to shell out another $50 as compared to you buy a Blu-ray player, and it's just works for years on end. So, this is a nice thing that the new Xbox and PS5, PS4, whatever, they're just fantastic for as a home entertainment type center. And the capabilities of this next generation are going to be even greater. So they didn't tell us anything about the wireless. So I'm going to be curious if it's going to be what Wi-Fi 6 is the latest.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine they would probably support that.
Well, so AMD,
what do you guys think?
They don't have a native Wi-Fi 6 chip, so I don't know if they would necessarily support it, or if they just tell people to. I mean, we know we know the Xbox has gigabit Ethernet, and we would assume the PS5 would as well. But yeah, I mean, speaking of the storage point, like by going to having all the consoles be have fast NVMe storage, even if PlayStation is faster, is important also for things like Resume. By having that fast non-volatile storage, as Microsoft showed off, you can save your game states, multiple game states that will survive a power cycle, survive a system update, and you can pop right in and out of games. And this is backwards compatible too, so it's not just new games. Your original Xbox, first gen Xbox games that are running in back compatibility, you can jump in and out of those too. So
looks like 4 second switch, 4 or 5 seconds, and that's pretty darn reasonable. Unbelievable. I think Josh was right. Yeah, he said like 47 things. I think he was totally right.
Oh yeah, I didn't hear anything particularly wrong there.
Giant stream of consciousness.
One of the cool things was the programmatic usage of being able to count on clock speeds, and I think that's underrated. Having personally had to program for embedded devices in the past, it's actually really key in order to get a smooth experience from the user's perspective to be able to rely on a certain level of performance. So I think it's actually pretty smart of them to stick a clock speed in there if you want to reserve 7 cores or 6 cores or 8 cores, depending on how you want to configure your software. I know they've got some options in there that you can count on a particular clock speed. I think that's really cool. The other thing that you mentioned that I think is even cooler that you sort of mentioned was that this is actually beyond any PC you can buy on a using an AMD metric here, sort of just say in a performance per watt basis, this particular ensemble is actually better than anything you can buy. The power supply is 300 watts. It's 300 watts. 8 cores and that fast of graphics. I mean, it's an SoC with graphics running at 1.8 gigahertz on there. It's incredible, So RDNA 2 is really going to be quite a boon when we see it. So I think that's actually pretty cool.
And that's actually one of the
people probably.
Go ahead, Josh.
I wouldn't doubt the TDP would be about 200 watts for just the SoC and the memory and just that kind of main board in.
That's amazing.
Is pretty good. And they were able to pack all of that into 360 millimeters square. And that's really impressive. I mean, TSMC's got their 7 nanometer running at a really nice rate to be able to put that much stuff into that small a space. And they did sacrifice some things. It's got less cache than, say, a desktop Ryzen 3000 series, and what you would get with the 5700. But other than that, it's kind of the full meal deal. And 360 millimeters square. That's it's not a small chip, but as compared to a 2080, which is what 450 by itself, or the 2080 Ti, which is 600 millimeter square, and of course that's 12 nanometer, which is 14 nanometer, but still, it's amazingly small, and you don't have, it's just an SoC. It's not a chiplet, so that's awesome. Yeah. Well, I mean, but it's pretty awesome.
And to
that sorry, go ahead.
I was to your point about how this is faster than, that what you can buy in terms of efficiency. Another way to think about that too is that with the PlayStation in particular, having those very, very fast throughput speeds on the storage, if games that are written primarily to the PS5 platform rely on that speed, you're going to have a hard time hitting that on most desktops for quite a while, because even the PCIe 4.0 Phison stuff nowadays can't hit those sequential numbers. No. And you're going to have a whole segment of it's going to be years with people still stuck on PCI 3 and even if they have a nice fast Samsung NVMe there. So that'll be interesting to see how they navigate that because Sony's for years been reluctant to bring cross-platform stuff, but we're seeing them erode that, which is great. Like Horizon Zero Dawn has been officially announced to be coming this summer, which is a great PlayStation game that'll be even better on PC, I'm hoping. And the MLB The Show, I believe that they're aiming to bring that to PC next year. So obviously not every game, but having very, very fast storage that exceeds what you're going to get on the majority of the PC market is going to be huge there. And also talking about the storage again, with the Xbox, they've got these little cartridge-like proprietary NVMe storage you can buy, little drives. And we don't know the pricing on that, but they do that to ensure compatibility. With Sony, you've got the built-in storage, but they also said there'll be a standard M.2 port. The problem, though, is it'll be a PCIe 4.0 port, but it'll have to be rated at the drive you put in there will have to be rated at a certain level, which we don't have yet. We don't, again, those Phison, those first gen Phison controllers are not capable of hitting these speeds. So, with Samsung getting to the market, with Phison getting into their next gen controllers, we'll have to see. But Sony was very clear to point out, you're not just going to be able to throw any M.2 SSD in there. So it's an advantage of the Sonys, again, as we saw with the PS4, having just easy access to upgrades. But this time, it might be a couple years before we can reasonably get on the consumer market a part that is performant enough to fit there.
And here I thought cartridge gaming was coming back.
Yeah, well, sort of.
In a way, it is. I mean, there's USB 3.2 support for external drives on both consoles, so you can hook up a drive. I don't know if you'll be able to load games directly off of that, or if you'll have to it'll be like sort of like your cold storage, and then you shuffle it to the internal flash to play.
Right. I mean, it's no Nintendo Switch. I mean, don't get me wrong.
Sure.
Whatever.
I love that this is going to finally introduce people to NVMe drives. And you're going to see that same shift in attitude we saw when SSDs first became easily obtainable at a reasonable price, when suddenly people who went to use a system that had an SSD in it when they've got an hard drive at home, were immediately pricing an SSD because they couldn't deal with the speed. And so this is going to be another sea change, teaching people that no, it is actually worth upgrading to NVMe. Unfortunately, as you say, I'm desperately jealous at the fact that they're going to be significantly faster than even like a brand new Ryzen PCIe 4.0 platform with a Phison on it. Hopefully this will bleed off into the PC market fairly quickly so that we can start to see something like that come up. Either a revision or the next generation of motherboards from definitely AMD, and you never know, AMD or Intel possibly as well. And the other nifty trick I think that the Xbox does that I want to see how well it's implemented and how well it works is that they can switch from single-threaded to multi-threaded and give you a different frequency because of that as well. So, is it going to be that some games actually love the fact that you're hitting 3.8 gigahertz with only 8 cores, as opposed to multi-threaded at 16 and 3.6 gigahertz? Is this going to have any effect whatsoever on a console game? If it does, are they going to be able to switch back and forth between that on the fly, or is it going to require a reboot or at least a warm boot before you can play your game? And is it going to matter, or is this just something that looks really nifty on paper?
Or what's it going to do to their PC ports? Oh my gosh, where's their spec level going to be? I'm sorry, that's not enough PC to play this console game.
Don't bring that up yet.
Was that too soon? I'm sorry.
The other factor here in all this, well, obviously, as I think it was Josh said earlier, price is just going to be a huge question here. But the other factor is we know what the Xbox Series X looks like, and it's got that cute little mini fridge tower design. In fact, during their presentation, they made a joke of comparing it to a full-size refrigerator, and we know that they're, it's got that convection design, hot air rises, let's tower it through, sort of similar to the old 2013 Mac Pro. We don't know what the PlayStation 5 is going to look like. And there's been rumors and there's been patents and there's been leaks. But because they're counting on those turbo frequencies, and there really are, and I don't know if that was reactionary to Microsoft's announcement or if that was always their plan, but they're saying like, hey, even though we've got 40% fewer CUs and the frequency, slower memory bandwidth. When you raise the clock, everything else goes up. Ray tracing performance goes up, and shaders and everything. Everything goes faster when you raise the GPU clock. So it's more than just CUs. But those turbo frequencies are only going to be in those microsecond, the very short burst, likely at least at the rated spec. So the design of this console and how well it can handle the thermal load is going to be crucial to how long they can sustain those, because on paper, the Xbox is more powerful, but if the PlayStation can sustain those boosts for longer, they can really close that gap and in some cases exceed it. So it'll be interesting to see.
I just found the new fanboy argument. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also waiting to see we're the first person to try and get those 4 disabled CUs back.
Right. Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's going to work.
We don't
out
even know.
That's going to be great.
Yeah.
True.
So it's a custom chip. May not be.
You know what? They burned those off for a reason.
Yeah. The area that I think everybody kind of overlooks and something that developers do not is the development environment of Microsoft versus Sony. Microsoft is very, very, very developer friendly with some extremely powerful tools that they can use to get games up and running. And Sony is not. They're better than they used to be, but they were for a long time kind of the John Carmack of consoles, in that you've got no GUI type tools. You've got, here's how you do assembly. Stuff that's close to metal and powerful, but was not friendly for developers. I mean, they spent a lot more time working on the technology than they were working on, just the game. And so,
Josh, programming and assembly is like digging post holes with a teaspoon. You have complete control over every grain of dirt.
You pretty much do. Yeah, it's But I mean, that was kind of an extreme example. They don't really use assembly with Sony, but I was talking to a developer a couple of years ago, and it's like, it's night and day what the tools Microsoft gives you versus what Sony. And Sony has improved dramatically, but I still don't think that they're at that level that Microsoft is. And so it's going to be very interesting to see the quality of games that are going to be PC, Xbox, and PlayStation, when they are released all at once, and hear more stories about development time between those 3 platforms.
Yeah, and there's been with these announcements, there's been a host of people on Twitter, old developers, and in some cases giving news stories, and others linking to older accounts, but talking about development cycles back to the original PS1, the PS2. I think there was one I saw on the PS3 where the guy was like, it took our team 3 weeks to get a square on the screen. And then it finally clicked and we were able to proceed. But yeah, over these last 2 generations, moving to an x86 architecture has been huge in general. And then now being able to take advantage of the unique way in which these companies are constructing this platform is going to be important. I mean, Sony last generation, I think it's pretty clear, had better first party exclusives, or not first party, but in some cases, but just generally better exclusives. That was Spider-Man, Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Last of Us.
Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yep.
Oh, that was on Xbox, wasn't it?
No, I thought it was just yes. Was it?
Yeah,
I swear it was just PS4, and then they released it for a year later on PC and Xbox.
I could have sworn it was cross-platform.
Anyway, well,
okay,
we could probably take a look.
Yeah, but
we have the internet at our fingers.
Yeah, the point is, regardless
For now.
of difficulty getting there, that generation had the better games. Looking forward, Microsoft, I mean, ever since they got rid of Don Matrick and put Phil Spencer in charge, they've been preparing for this. They've got backwards compatibility far in excess of Sony. They've been buying up studios. They've been very consumer friendly in the sense of like crossplay and Game Pass and play on PC and Xbox, bring your library forward. And Sony's doing that too. Although, so with Xbox, how they've said with the Series X is on day one, everything that plays on Xbox One, including your back compat 360 and first gen games, will play just fine. In fact, in many cases, play even better because you can further increase the resolution and frame rate. Whereas with PlayStation, they're bringing, I think they said 100. And it'll probably be the most popular games. You'll probably find what you want to play there. But it's not the same kind of universal compatibility. There's going to have to be some work done on Sony's side to bring that forward. So
the X is also going to add HDR reconstruction. Come to think of it,
yes, that's no, I don't know how good that'll look, but it's a feature
on the fly. It's actually it'll be a thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I've in terms of adding HDR to things that weren't made with HDR in mind. I don't know how that ends up, but. I mean,
they do it spot wise. They're not doing it at full frame.
It'll be like those old videos for the DX11 launch, where they just cranked up the brightness ridiculously to say that it was
exactly. Your explosions will make you go blind.
Yep. So, this is what we have now. Where, like we said, the things we're waiting to see are the price and the in the PlayStation's case, the final like physical design. Which, unless did I miss something that hasn't been announced, right? Because I couldn't find anything on that. So and that'll be interesting. And of course, also with the global crisis that's happening now, I do wonder, will these things which are scheduled to hit this fall, this Christmas, will they hit on time? Will the supply chains be in place? Will the stores be open? We'll see. As for, I mean, there's always the debate, we're PC first, we're PC focused. What do you buy, right? And I've always bought consoles because certain games like the NHL series are exclusive arbitrarily. And I refuse to be left without my hockey, especially now that I'm without real hockey too. Although as a Sabres fan, that's probably for the best.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I feel you.
But we were, the Sabres were set to play the Habs, that final game that got canceled. So,
yep. And I think we're both happy about that in a way.
Yeah. But
someday we're gonna have to discuss your Buffalo fandom.
Well, it's a long, sad story. Yeah. I think I've got Jack Daniels around here somewhere, but
okay.
Come on, Stefan Diggs. Diggs.
Yes. Okay, well, that's the Bills. The Bills are looking up.
Yeah.
Now that Brady's
Bills
gone,
are looking great.
Now that Brady's gone, it's the division's looking pretty good. Josh Allen, but having to pick a console. What I've been reading, people are justifying is saying, well, Microsoft has pretty much said, hey, anything we make that's exclusive is going PC too. So if Sony's not going to make that same argument or that guarantee, then maybe the PlayStation's the one to get. If you're going to be a PC plus console gamer, do you go with the PlayStation? But on the other hand, the Xbox looks like it might be more powerful. We'll have to see how that works out in practice. But very interesting. This is the most interesting that the consoles have been for a long time. I remember back in 2013 with the PS4 and the Xbox One, there was a sense of meh. Like it just wasn't as exciting. The Microsoft was playing up the home entertainment features. The consoles were clearly underpowered. Both companies were insisting on making a profit on the hardware. They didn't want to do the loss leader thing again. So. And yes, Maxius in our Discord chat is recommending we should do an NHL, virtual NHL tournament at PC Per just to bide our time. So maybe we'll do that. But yeah, very, very interesting to keep an eye on the consoles here and giving us a glimpse of what we can expect on the desktop from RDNA 2, which is still, forthcoming here in terms of products that we can buy on the desktop.
Impressive.
So, yes. Very impressive. Any other thoughts on this? No? Okay. Josh, do you need to go or do you want to hang around and talk about the Ryzen 4900H?
I probably better leave.
Okay. So
that's another interesting SoC.
Yes.
It certainly has pulled out all the stops.
It has a surprising announcement, at least I thought so, from AMD.
Yeah,
but
well,
we'll get to that in just a minute. For now, we're going to say goodbye to Josh, and we're going to take a break to thank our sponsor this week. We'll be right back. Today's show is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Now, there are a ton of VPN providers out there, and you've probably heard of a couple of them. Some of you may have even used one. At least I hope you've considered using a VPN, because VPNs, at least a good quality VPN, is essential for protecting your privacy and your security while you're browsing online. But, I like to have sponsors that I can personally recommend because of my own personal experience. And one of those in this case is ExpressVPN. That's why I was so excited to have them become a sponsor. It's because I've been an ExpressVPN customer since March 2017. It's been about 3 years. At that time, I looked at a bunch of services, both paid and free, and ExpressVPN not only was the fastest, but as I'll mention here, they're the one that I trust the most in terms of how they handle user privacy and user security. And here's why. First, ExpressVPN doesn't log your data. Lots of VPN services, especially the ones that are very, very cheap or free, they have to make money somehow. It's very expensive to run a VPN network. And so if you're not paying for your VPN service, they're making money somewhere. And that could be, selling your data to ad companies or logging and tracking for other type of marketing purposes. And you don't have that with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN developed a technology called Trusted Server that makes it impossible for their servers to log any of your info. And that's because they store your session data in volatile memory, in RAM. And so once your session is over, that data is erased. It's not erased in the sense of a traditional hard drive where you can recover it. Because if you understand volatile versus persistent storage, with volatile storage, when the power's cut, when that session ends, that data is gone. And so you're protected, your session is private. ExpressVPN, even if they wanted to, couldn't market your data. And of course, they don't want to because they value your privacy and security above all else. The second reason is speed. Now, when you use a VPN service, all of your traffic is routed through that VPN's servers. That's how it works. That's the magic of a VPN. That's what protects and anonymizes your data. It's what allows you to appear like you're coming from a different location in order to access region-locked content. So if your VPN server is slow, that'll be your bottleneck. It wouldn't matter if you had gigabit fiber at the house. If your VPN server is running at dial-up speed, that's the experience you're going to have when you're connected. And I've been using ExpressVPN, like I said, for 3 years. And this is one of the reasons I chose them, one of the primary reasons I chose them. They were the fastest among all the services that I personally use. So when I'm, browsing at other websites, I don't feel any slowdown. When I'm accessing video, if I'm trying to access BBC video from the UK, which is region locked there, I can stream in HD. And the last thing that really sets ExpressVPN apart from the other VPNs that I've personally used and that I tried out was just how easy it is to use. Unlike some other VPNs, you don't need to input or program anything. I mean, you can if you want to. They give you that information. If you want to manually put in DNS and all that and set things up, you have that option. But if you don't want to deal with that, you don't have to. ExpressVPN has great user interfaces, great apps that allow you to have quick and easy one-button setup and connect. And it works on all of your devices, PC, Mac, iPhone, Android tablets, even through your router with your smart devices at home, Apple TVs, Rokus, and everything. It's very easy to set up, very easy to use. So protect yourself with a VPN that I use and trust, and support us here at PCPer. Just head to expressvpn.com/PCPer today, and you can get an extra 3 months for free on a 1-year package. That's expressvpn.com/PCPer. Check it out to learn more about this deal. And again, get those 3 months free on a 1-year deal. Thanks so much to ExpressVPN for supporting the PC Perspective podcast. And we're back. So thanks to Josh for joining us, and he'll be back next week. No worries there. But let's continue on with the news this week. Sticking with AMD-themed news, we had some more announcements from them on their upcoming Zen 2-based Ryzen 4000 mobile platform. So as you may recall, they announced this upcoming array of mobile processors ranging from 15 to 45 watts. And this is, again, Zen 2. So this is the good stuff that we didn't have last year on mobile, only on the desktop. And it's bringing, we haven't tested them yet, but the whole platform is promising significant improvements in performance, efficiency, and graphics performance as well. So very exciting there. And up until now, their top end part was the 4800H. This was a 45 watt TDP 8 core 16 thread part. And they announced this week, surprisingly, that they're going to up the ante a little bit with the introduction of an even faster processor targeted at gamers and that are gaming laptops, and that's the Ryzen 9 4900H. And it's interesting here because we saw them sort of do this last year with the Ryzen 3000 with that exclusive deal with Microsoft. The Surface Edition Ryzen was their top end part that got a little bit of a boost. Now this one, it does get a little bit of a boost, but it's even more of a boost, I guess you could say, than last year's upgrade. So this is, again, it's an 8 core 16 thread part, 45 watt base TDP, 3.3 gigahertz base. Here's a slide if you're watching the video version that compares. So that middle one is the 4800, which again, up until this week was the top mobile part. So the base clock goes from 2.9 to 3.3 on the 4900H. A boost goes from 4.2 to 4.4. And you also get an additional graphics core, 7 to 8 of those Vega, and this is a new and improved Vega graphics cores. And
what did they do to improve them again?
Just the efficiency, but another generation of iterating on that, and it's an impressive. Again, we haven't tested any of this, but from what they've told us, a very impressive jump over last generation's Vega mobile graphics.
Okay.
But the frequency too, from the 4800H to the 4900H, it goes from 1600 to 1750 megahertz on the graphics frequency, and all within that same 45 watt base TDP. Base
doesn't
TDP.
cost them anything more.
Well,
isn't that great?
With them specifically citing gaming laptops, what we expect, of course, is that these will be the chassis that are more aggressively designed in terms of cooling, thicker, more aggressive fan profiles, maybe, just more fans in general. Because we would have seen the 4800H on some gaming laptops as well, but they would have also been found in like sort of prosumer studio productivity devices that can be a little bit thinner and lighter. Whereas this 4900H is going to go into these bigger chassis, and we'll certainly see that 45 watt TDP exceeded when you have the thermal headroom to do so. So just really further, I don't want to say putting the screws to, because we can't verify any of this yet, but really challenging Intel. AMD, despite their very impressive gains on the desktop last year, didn't really, smack down Intel on mobile. And this year, that's what they're aiming for. And we don't know if it's going to, at every price point, what will happen, but they're certainly going to get a lot closer. And in many laptop categories this year, they'll probably be the best bet in terms of performance and efficiency. So we'll see.
There's the mystery of what Intel is going to come out with.
Well, we know we've got
Start to see the new GPU, or are we just going to see what we expect, which is the incremental?
That doesn't look too impressive yet. Their GPU, but the fact that they're still moving around, and AMD keeps shooting them. It's like, oh, you're still moving. Hit him again.
Did you mention it's only PCIe 3.0?
On Intel side, you mean? Oh, of course.
Well, no.
Yeah.
I thought they're these new mobiles.
Oh, are the mobiles?
The PCIe 3.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
Okay. I didn't catch that. Huh.
Interesting.
Okay. Well,
it was in Sebastian's, which I thought was surprising, but you're looking for low power, low heat, so that does actually make sense.
Yeah, because the primary advantage of the PCIe for speed is those much higher power draw drives, which wouldn't be suitable. But we can see here Sebastian's got the full lineup now of the Ryzen 4000 family as announced, starting with the Ryzen 3 4300U and the 15 watt TDP category at the bottom there, and going up all the way to that new 4900H. So it's again, on paper, pretty impressive lineup for their mobile. I'm very excited to see how this performs, because as we said, we looked at some of these laptops last year, And there were some good and some bad implementations. So like on the Lenovo ThinkPads, the T495, I believe it was, which was a 3700U 15-watt part. That was a really good laptop. It was cheap and it performed well, and the battery life was decent, and it integrated Intel AC Wi-Fi alongside it. So it was just a good mashup. But then you looked at like the Microsoft Surface laptop with the AMD part in it that upgraded 3780U, and that wasn't good at all. The thermals just weren't there. They used a Qualcomm Wi-Fi chip, which was very poor in performance. So kind of all over the place. So we'll see.
Bad mashup.
Yeah, it just wasn't a good. I really wanted to like it.
Surface iteration was.
Yeah. Now the Ice Lake version of that laptop is pretty great. It's cool and performant, and it's more expensive, but that's what I ended up swapping it for. And I want to be able to say that about the AMD part this time around. So we'll keep an eye there. The laptops are shipping. We've had announcements starting. There's been talk about being able to order certain products. I've heard that some of our colleagues have started receiving review samples. We haven't, unless Sebastian has, which he hasn't mentioned to me, but we haven't got anything yet, but we'll be looking to grab some of those Ryzen 4000 laptops here shortly. And then also,
well, I can tell you from the search side of the house, when you look at the search against like the site, most of the internet, like 55% of the people on the internet are interested in laptop parts. So, and laptops reviews and things like that. So yeah, we should definitely get a few of those onto the site, because it's going to help.
Yeah.
If you can find any.
Exactly, especially now, because it's work from home Armageddon with
multi-billion-dollar company, and it's going to be several weeks, possibly 8, before we can get new laptops.
Yep.
Ouch.
It's
can't even get replacement parts for broken shit. It's insane.
Well, you've heard, of course, GameStop is an essential business.
Yes,
because they're helping you work from home with. I assume. I mean, they've got to sell something. I mean,
Mavis Beacon.
Or I mean, I guess you could hack a switch and run something on the Tegra processor.
I think they have some cords in there, maybe some USB chargers or something. Maybe.
Oh no! Yeah. What do you mean monitors have different plugs?
Yes.
I don't understand.
Every monitor has the letters HDMI on it, right? That's what that means.
No,
it's
not
monitor.
Dell ones.
But, well, we kid, and we hope if you're a GameStop employee that your company has a little bit more sense.
Hey, the new dude at the helm, he's going to pull it through. Yeah. What's his name again?
Technically, he doesn't start till April is his excuse right now.
Never mind then. It's all going up in flames. Gotcha. It's all going up in flames. Forget I said anything. It's on fire.
Real quick on Ryzen 4000 before we move on, there was also an announcement, too, that if you're looking for a slightly improved part, but you don't want that 45-watt TDP, scale it back a little bit, they also, at the very end, announced the 4900HS. So this is, again, an 8-core, 16-thread part, 3 gigahertz base, 4.3 gigahertz boost. So a little bit over that 4800H, but in a 35-watt TDP base envelope. So more options there for various form factors and performance needs. And that's coming spring 2020, they said. So no specific release date on that guy.
35 watts is actually really impressive for everything they're packing in there. Up to 16 cores. What was the gigahertz topping out at? 3.8 or was it 4?
4.3.
4.3. Yeah, and 8 core GPU on the side. It's very impressive inside 35 watts.
Well, I mean, you look at
I'm on this power kick lately.
Used to generate.
Yeah. I mean, if you look back just a couple of years ago, and then you look now at what AMD has pushed this market to, I mean, 15-watt TDP class parts. And again, it's always with everyone always chimes in, 15-watt, and it never runs at that, but sure. But in that class, you're looking at up to 8-core, 16 threads. Base of 1.8, but boost of 4.2, and that's just insane. And that's the AMD factor of what they've. I mean, even if you're an Intel fan, for whatever reason, like the pressure they've put on this market and forcing them to so nonviolence.
No. It's like virtual. It's not. Yes. We don't mean that. It's like whatever. It's symbolic.
It's exciting to see the market offering more and more performance at all the different tiers. But another company that had an update this week was Apple. They were supposed to have one of their, couple time a year big events at one of the Steve Jobs Theater, but obviously they had to cancel that. And so they had a digital event. And in that event, they announced new iPad Pros, including a new keyboard stand and keyboard functionality that will be coming to other iPads as well. Or I'm sorry, not keyboard, trackpad, mouse functionality. That will be coming there as well. And then they also updated the MacBook Air. And the interesting thing there is they moved to 10th gen Intel parts for that. And these are custom chips. It's the Ice Lake, 10th gen family, but they're not exactly what you're going to see in other Ice Lake or 10th gen Intel Ultra portables. So from what we've been able to tell, the base model is an i3 1000 G4. It's a dual core, turbo boost up to 3.2 gigahertz. There's an upgrade to an i5 1030 G7, which is a quad core, turbo boosting up to 3.5. And then the top end built to order option is an i7 1060 G7. That's a quad core up to 3.8 gigahertz and 8 megs of cache. And you may notice that sounds a little different. That's because the official part, the part you'd find in most other laptops, would be the 1065 G7. So this is the 1060. The key factor there, though, is the G. That's the new improved Iris Plus graphics that made the huge leap, doubling performance over UHD graphics. And that's important because, I don't know, Brett, did you get a chance to use the previous generation MacBook Air?
I have an older 13 Pro, but it's not that much farther behind than the new one or the older Air. But the latest, don't turn up your nose at the i3. It's 2 generations better than the previous base i5. Mm. So it's actually slightly better, even in the i3 variant. It's actually due to the 10 nanometer, of course, and the process improvement and all that, and the node improvement. It's actually better than the previous generation i5. The other obvious switch out is the keyboard. They finally threw in as everybody knows, the towel on that stupid butterfly mechanism. They finally said it's enough. We give, Uncle, and they switched to this very similar, what they call their Magic keyboard, which just means it works often. So that's their scissor switch mechanism, the same one that they went to on the 16. I think it's the same size, a little bit. The spacing's a little bit wider on it. The feel's pretty good from what I understand. I mean, I've tried them out in the store. It's really pretty excellent. No problem at all there. Jim, as you pointed out, the Iris Plus versus HD graphics was a big change as well. So that's welcome improvement. But the other cool thing about the graphics is now versus like even the Pro, you can drive a 6K display off of the Air. 6K display off of the Air in HDR or XDR capable off of the MacBook Air. It's pretty impressive. The memory subsystem went from DDR3 to DDR4, all low power, of course. So you see hundreds of megahertz there, I think on the order of 600, 700 megahertz additional clocking on the memory. And they finally kicked to the curb that stupid 128 gigabyte base level for storage. And it now comes with that's okay, stroking your chin with, I could do a little bit better, but I don't hate it, 256 gig. The entry price, the price to admission is $1 below $1,000. So you're looking at $100-ish less than it used to be. Frankly, it's a better deal than the Pro, actually, in my opinion.
Well, and that's just because Intel is still, they're still stuck at that higher TDP on 14 nanometer. So you're still getting, it's still the 9th gen Intel.
Oh, yeah. But I mean the 13 Pro, but you'd miss stuff like, oh my God, that touch bar. Oh, what are you going to do without that? But you get an escape key back, so thank God.
Right. I mean,
but at least they kept the emojis at the top of the keyboard.
Did they? Well, that's on the touch bar models.
Yeah.
You mean
that's
you mean
what
the
I
Mac emojis for like changing the screen?
Well, no,
brightness?
yeah, the touch bar.
Oh, that
silly little thing.
So I'm interested in seeing. I mean, I know knowing the performance improvement that the 10th gen Intel part brings over its predecessor. I'm just interested in seeing how much better it'll be, because I went out when I first started traveling last year, and I was taking all these long flights. I went out and bought an Air, just for like on the road productivity, like articles and emails, because on a plane, I'm so incredibly fat that I couldn't, with my 15-inch MacBook Pro, I couldn't open the screen because my stomach comes out, and then I have to put the computer far enough back, and then the seats are so narrow or so close together, I couldn't open the screen all the way. So I needed something with a smaller footprint, and I bought one, and it sucked. It was terrible. Like everything felt laggy because the graphics on that Intel's Intel HD graphics,
UHD was terrible.
Yeah, it was UHD back then.
I mean, like just opening windows, there was always like a judder and a stutter, and it was an awful experience, especially contrasting it with the Pro, which had discrete AMD graphics in it at the time.
You can always tell it's struggling when you move one of the windows, and it just gives you the square versus actually visually moving the entire window at once. It gives you an outline, so you can tell it knows it is like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fall over and catch on fire. So it just gives you an outline.
Yeah,
versus moving the entire display.
There was a time when in Windows that was a huge deal, where you could turn on the graphics performance to see the window contents when moving it.
God,
right? Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But
didn't they also announce an iPad that they described as the end of laptop computers from now on?
Well, they do that
your next computer
every 6 months.
Yeah,
but they mean it this time. This time they mean it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because there's a new iPad. There's new iPad Pro hardware, which is the same external dimensions, but is got the faster, updated A series chip in it. And then they've got a new stand that has a trackpad, which they'd already introduced rudimentary trackpad functionality for accessibility purposes. This is full on, like you can use a trackpad or a mouse with it now. And they're saying that, hey, look, now it's what's a computer or whatever. But it's funny because all they've done is they've turned it into a 2-in-1.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, it's now just a 2-in-1.
And then announced brand new computers.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, but it has LiDAR now, which is, by the way, borrowed from the space planes from Space Above and Beyond. So that's all I want to say about that.
Oh,
they finally brought that back. Yeah, so that's good.
That was a damn good show.
And really, no, it does. It does have a LiDAR. It does.
Yes.
It was an excellent show. It does actually have a LiDAR lens in the back for doing AR. Yep, exactly. They're really moving heavily into that, and I can't wait to embrace my new AR masters.
Yeah, well, you'll just need to shell out $1,000
Apple Reality
for.
Yeah. I can't wait. Soon.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you can check out the Apple website to see the new MacBooks and iPads. I noticed it was funny as they were doing their digital keynote. They've shuttered all their stores, at least in the U.S. And
reopened them in China.
They reopened
them this week.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah, but the stores here are closed.
No new cases will do that.
Sure. Yeah. No, everything's fine. But
so they say.
But they said, and I don't know if they just. I don't know if they just didn't have it in their updated copy, but they said it'll be available, this week in stores. So,
see the price on that keyboard attachment, by the way, for the iPad?
Very expensive. Very expensive.
Pricey. For the 12.9, I believe it's $349.
Yep.
It's still cheaper than the monitor stand.
Yes,
you could buy
you could buy a whole MacBook Air for the price of the monitor stand.
Yep.
But
it's totally worth it.
Yes, there are, as always, third-party cheaper options. I think Logitech announced a bunch of stuff alongside the Apple announcement. So,
my friends, something inert iron bar.
But all right. Well, now don't want to dwell too much on Apple here, but let's finish up the news real quick with an announcement that I know a lot of folks in our community are waiting for any minute now. It may have actually already.
Is that Animal Crossing?
They're
close. It is a spiritual successor to Animal Crossing, and that's Doom Eternal. The new full featured Doom game from id Software and Bethesda Softworks is coming out tonight as we record this. Like I said, it may have already gone live. If not, it should. It's okay. It says 2 hours here, at least in this market, 2 hours, and it's about 11 p.m. Eastern right now. So check that out. I got Sebastian his copy all set so he can do some benchmarking. But yeah, I mean, I saw early reviews were a little mixed. I saw some pretty negative stuff. I saw a couple of places that were pretty positive on it. But the people who love these kind of games, they're going to love it. You know, they'll find a way to love it, and that'll be that.
Maury's changed his pants 5 times today.
Wow. I haven't played Doom in a long time. Years.
You didn't play the 2016 release?
Nope.
That was pretty good. That was pretty fun.
I did, but like in 2018. Took me a while to get to it.
All right. Well, Jordan just texted me saying he might be ready to join us in the after show. So let's finish up this show so we can get to that.
That's a threat. That's what that is.
It is. Oh no, I lost Sebastian's review here. Here we go. I just got to reload it. All right. I think the article is loaded here. So this is a review. We'll get the review wrapped up here. Sebastian wrote this for us. And as we said at the top of the show, he wasn't able to join us. So I will try to do this justice here. So this is,
and he disavows all knowledge of this podcast at this point, right?
He does. Yep. He does. Yep. We may never see him
except for his pictures.
Yep.
Well, sure. So this is the Corsair iCUE 220 or 220T RGB airflow case. It's a mid-tower case. It launched over the summer. I think he said it was July. Yes. And the big thing about this case is it's an airflow focused case, but the big deal is that it's a $100 case that comes with $80 worth of addressable RGB fans. So it's the comes with 3 of the Corsair SP120 RGB Pro fans, 3-pack of which retail for $79. And so right off the bat, if you're just into addressable RGB fans, like this is a way to get those, and then you might have an extra case around if you need it. But overall, he gave this case a gold award. He said it's good to work with. It's attractive. It comes in white or black. He reviewed the white version here. It's got a mesh front panel for those addressable RGB fans. It's got a traditional layout where you've got the shroud in the bottom that separates the PSU from the motherboard and internal components. It's officially rated up to a full-size ATX motherboard, but he did say that it can fit. There's room to the right if you go with a motherboard that's wider, but the issue you're going to run into in terms of space is going up, especially if you want to mount fans on the top there because it's pretty tight. Let me see if I can find. Here we go. So here's a picture of an ATX, regular ATX motherboard in there. And you can see you don't have a lot of space. If you're watching the video, on the left of the picture is the top of the case. So there's room for fans, maybe a radiator if you get creative, but not a lot of room to grow in that direction. But as you can see, if you had a wider motherboard, no problem going over those grommets there in terms of expanding that way. He said that the PSU shroud area is also pretty tight. Again, apologize as our speeds are a little messed up here at the moment, but you can see it's pretty tight to get the PSU in there. And so he said this might be a case where you don't go fully modular because you're going to have to really get your hands in there to swap out cables. It might be better to have everything plugged in and just bring it around so that you don't have to worry about trying to get things routed and changed if you ever need to get access to that. But overall, he says it's a nice case. It's really just those RGB fans that really make it such a great deal. If you're assuming you're willing to pay retail for those addressable RGB fans, the back.
Well, the controller's insane. Look at it.
Yes,
above our trademark SSD.
Right. It's got the lighting controller, fan controller, hub, cable management, and cable routing is okay. There's not a ton of room. He said he had to pretty much force that back panel on there, but it's acceptable. We've seen better, we've seen worse. So,
well, that top ribbon cable is pretty stretched.
Yeah, it is. But you got room for 2.5-inch SSDs on the back there. You've got regular 3.5-inch drive bays in the lower right. Lower left, next to the PSU down there. So a decent mid-tower, not too expensive case that comes with really nice fans. Temperatures were okay. Noise levels were okay. The Corsair iCUE software, as always, was easy to use. Doesn't require any sign-in or active account or anything. So Sebastian always likes that. And overall, a nice case. Wins a gold award from Sebastian. Like I said, I probably didn't do this review justice, so head over to PCPro.com and check out the full review and all of Sebastian's photography if you're interested in this case. And again, that was the Corsair iCUE 220T RGB Airflow mid-tower case. $100 with $80 worth of fans inside.
Yeah.
I think that case could probably use a little, actually, believe it or not, a few more fans.
Oh, well, certainly you could fit a few more in there.
I think
mounting points.
Yes.
Definitely could do.
Mm.
Oh, it's simply because there's a lot of, believe it or not, it just appears as there's a lot of occlusion on the front from, I mean, they call it like an airflow case, but, there's a lot of metal, as to quote somebody, on the front. So I think it could use more fans.
Well, I mean, he did say that in his temperature testing that with the stock configuration of the front 3 and then your CPU cooler, air was moving through pretty well. It had a nice airflow coming out the back. But yeah, you could always enhance that. So that's the last regular topic. Let's check out our picks of the week. So we've got a few here that have come in. Let me make sure I can pull these up because we had some contributors here. So Kent sent us a pick. And I haven't seen it yet, so.
Oh, perfect. Throw it up.
Brave man.
All right, so this is a pick from Kent Burgess, who is a member of our community and contributor as well. He's written some great articles for us recently, and he's recommended this for the he sent this to me when Josh was on his optical disc tirade. So this is a product for those of us who still love optical storage. It's the Vantech NST 536S3. We'll have the link in the show notes, but it's basically an external USB 3 adapter or hub for an external optical drive. And they've got I guess you could put pretty much any 5.25 drive you want in there. So it's just the bracket. It doesn't come with the drive. But it's, and I've seen these over the years. I haven't seen one in a while.
Is that a vertical tray drive?
Yeah. You know it.
Yes.
You know
what
I mean, it's just a standard drive that's just mounted vertically for this enclosure.
Yeah.
And I apologize. My internet is just slow, but so that's the Vantech. It's a Vantech external or Vantech Nexstar DX external adapter for a 5.25 inch drive. So if you want to go with one of these cases that doesn't have an optical drive, you can hook this up and you'll still have access when you need it. That's $45 currently at Amazon. And then Sebastian had a pick that Jeremy expanded on for us. If I can find it, here we go. So with the crisis, people being forced to stay at home and quarantine, there's a lot of companies stepping up and either offering free games or highlighting things that are already free. And Jeremy found a bunch of them for us here. There's the Steam Spring Game Festival. So there's a bunch of games you can play for free. There's the
because the Games Developer Conference didn't happen, so that would have been where these indie guys showed off all of their games this year.
Right.
So it didn't happen. Here you go. Here's the 40 competitors format, absolutely for free. So itch.io is always fun.
And Epic has their games, if you're so inclined.
I've played the Stanley Parable. I've really enjoyed that one.
It will stand up. I don't know about Watch Dogs.
No, I heard that launch. You don't want to play that one, actually. No.
Let's see. Humble has some deals.
Yep.
And
there's
GOG has their spring sale, and they've highlighted some free games as well that you can play. So some of them are like demos, but there's also some like just straight up legit free games.
Mm-hmm.
So,
or you could go through your Steam library of shame.
Yes, I mean that for most of us, this is the time to tackle that back catalog.
You mean the ones with 0 hours? Is that what you're talking about? Those?
Yeah, those several hundred games with 0 hours.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Why do you got to talk about that? Why?
Because every time I launch Steam, it stares me in the face.
Secret. Nobody wants to talk about that. They were such a good deal at the time. Shut up.
I know. They gave me a badge for it. No problem.
We should compare years on Steam at some point. We should go look at our year badge.
Well, the play ratio would probably be more revealing. But
oh no, I don't want to show that up.
No.
There's like 2 games with 20,000 hours, and then everything else less than an hour.
Exactly.
But all right, Brett, you've got a pick for us.
I do, and this plays well into the please stay at home and stop making the rest of us sick. It is a free, just supply your email video conferencing software that I've been using for years, and it was not very good a few years ago. I'm not going to say that it was terrible, but it was usable, but it was difficult sometimes to get people to get connected, and it took some time to get screen shares going, but they've improved their backend. They've gone out and gotten mobile platforms now. They're on iOS, they're on Android. They've got really good browser support. The screen sharing is very quick. I use it for a lot of presentations and talking with people. The video chat's really reasonably fast, and it's free. They allow you to have video chat and screen sharing for, I think, up to 45 minutes or something like that, an hour. Then they're trying to, get you into the paid plan. But it's very low configuration. It's basically click a link. I recommend the Chrome browser, no matter which platform you're on. That seems to work the best, although I believe that they will work in other browsers. Chrome seems to work really good. It's definitely something that you might want to keep in mind as you have to stay home. And when you're not in Steam, maybe you have to talk to other people. I know that's weird besides the pizza guy. But yeah, maybe you've got to do something like this.
Okay, so that's it's Uber Conference. I've used them. There's a nonprofit I work with, and we use them as the phone teleconferencing component of their.
Mm-hmm. And it works good just for audio as well.
Mm-hmm. Very, very good.
And remember that everyone wants to see your pets during the conference call.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just one-to-one. You can have like a bunch of people on at the same time.
Yeah.
All right. And then my pick is something potentially gross, depending on how you think about it. But I get allergies, mild allergies, but I'm always congested. And this is not a good time of year to be like sniffing and coughing in public because people.
I think I know what this is.
Yeah, they look at you, and then things happen, and people in suits show up and take you away. And
is it the garden weasel
podcast? But
yes,
sweet.
But anyway, this is something, and I've just started using this, and it's basically, if you're familiar with the neti pot, which is the like teapot where you boil a saline kind of tea, and then you pour it in one nostril and out the other, and it rinses your sinuses. Well, they've had those for years. I've tried those. And then there was a company called, I think, NetiMed, which came out with like a squeeze bottle. So it's the same concept, except instead of having to rely on gravity, you can force it through. Well, this is like one step beyond that, where it's called the Navage, and you put it's got 2 things for your nose. One of them is pushing and one is suction. And so it even further enhances the ability to put this saline solution through your sinuses. And like I said, I've been using it for about a week. It's really good. It really clears it out for me. If you've never used anything like this, it's an unpleasant sensation, but the aftermath is worth it. I've seen, in terms of controversy around this product, is that they require you to use their sort of like proprietary saline pods, but you can very easily work around that. You'll figure it out when you see it. Like, you just basically need to cut the rim off of one of the pods and kind of stick it down in there, and then you can mix your own saline solution into the top chamber there. And then a lot of people have said that like the most common complaint beyond that is that it dies after a year or even a few months. I can't attest to that yet. It's been it's been a week, a little over a week, but so far so good. But it works so well that if it died, I guess that's okay. But just try to keep it clean and yeah. So if you've got sinus congestion, allergies, and things like neti pots aren't working as well, this is like that to an extreme. So
ShopVac's got a nasal attachment.
I'm sure they do.
Yep,
I'm sure they do.
Yep, that's good too. Jim, do you have enough pharmaceutical loadout going to protect you from any downsides of the pot here? I'm just seeing some chat in the channel with like, oh, watch out, it's gonna give you brain-eating amoeba.
Oh, well, so
Which
with
you can't
anything,
actually
with any of these, anything like whether it's the straight neti pot or the squeeze pot, anything you're going to put in your nose, use distilled water or boil the water first. Boil the water, let it cool. Then
we do not recommend using hand sanitizer in the neti pot.
No.
Or lavage.
Ouch.
But so for any
or
of
taking
these,
your contacts out afterwards. Either one.
There is a chance that there could be amoebas or other little nasties in the water that would be fine if you drank it because your stomach acid would kill it. But if you push it up into your nose, it can get into your brain. I mean, that's every summer we get a report of a kid in Louisiana swimming in a pond and then he gets a disease and dies. And it's scary. So you always, with any of these, use distilled water or boil the water first.
Bright
Not
blue water
for use in Flint, Michigan, or Canadian Indian Reserves.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
Either one. Mine tailings is a bad sign. Don't swim there.
Yes. It's pretty. Don't touch.
Wow, this is a great blue. Let's go swimming. No, bad. That's copper. Don't.
Okay, let's take some Instagram pics then.
Okay,
At
that's
this
fine.
abandoned nuclear reactor in Russia.
Yep, and it's got a great glow.
It does that.
All right. Well, let's wrap the show up
Like
here.
Jim's wall.
Sure. Not Intel Blue. People were pointing that out. I did not. There's no intention to do Intel Blue. Intel is not a sponsor. Has never sponsored the PC Perspective website or podcast as far as I've been in charge. So, I mean, if they want to, hey, give me a call. But no, they haven't. Anyway, let's wrap this up. Apologize for the confusion with people coming and going this week. Apologize if you've been able to hear. There's tornado warnings, so the sirens have been going off randomly throughout. So you may have heard that.
I thought that was the looting.
There could be too. It's hard to tell.
I see. I couldn't make up my mind on the picks, so you're skipping them both?
Oh, shoot. Jeremy, I forgot. I'm sorry. We forgot
We
you.
got distracted by Kent.
I went out of order, and then that screwed it all up. Okay, hang on a second.
Well, it was Kent, but it was worth
It was
going on.
It was Kent's fault. Pretty sure.
Because I support optical media and the carrying on of.
All right, so which one do you
I'm torn if I should just go with something plain neat or something that's, socially responsibly neat.
Which one do you want me to show first?
Oh, well, didn't do it in order. Do the nifty one first.
Is it this one?
7.5 inch. Yeah, well, do that one first.
Okay.
So,
fashion for.
Well, kind of. It's 3D printed. It's an STL design for what is the framework of the N95 mask that you can't get. It's not 3D printing the filters. Like that, you still need to get the filters. But the problem is that with the pandemic going on, there is a shortage of these masks because of, assholes buying them all up and taking them home. So we've hit the point in several countries where they're suggesting that medical personnel, maybe a handkerchief or a scarf might be a good idea since you can't get a mask. And so these guys at Copper 3D have published an STL of a 3D printed N95 mask that's going to work almost as good as the original, definitely better than a buddy scarf. So they've got an initiative going on that they call Hack the Pandemic, where hospitals that actually need these things are putting it out there. Now, you're going to have to make sure you know what the hell you're doing. Don't try and provide half-ass printed masks to anyone, because that, in a way, would be worse than the scarf. But it's a lovely thing. And then up at the University of Leicester in the UK, they're developing a simpler mask with 3D printing. The idea being this is something you put on a patient who's coming in to be tested. So they can sit in the waiting room and wait for their test wearing this thing, which will protect, if they have it, anyone from their mucus or cough, phlegm coming out and infecting anyone else. Again, it's not going to be as good as a medical device, but at the same time, if you can get them out there, at least they're there. So the Hack the Pandemic it launched, I think, less than a day ago. So they're still working on it. There's a couple of hospitals definitely in the States that are looking for these. I'm sure there are all across the planet. There was the interesting thing in Italy about the valves for the ventilators, which may or may not have been a hoax or just a matter of the press picking up on it so quickly that the company decided to back down on any enforcement of their IP whatsoever. But yeah, it's just, something you can actually do with your 3D printer that might help out in the short or the long term. But keep an eye on it because, of course, these may arrive at the hospital. They take a look at them and say, yeah, 90% of these are utter garbage. Don't waste your time. But hey, it's worth a shot if you've got the spare filament to try it.
It's cool. Are you guys keeping an N95 mask on close at hand in case of sudden cabin depressurization?
No, I'm going down with the ship.
All right, just saying. You should think about it.
Well,
are you just going to vampire sneeze it then? You're just going to vampire sneeze?
Just out in the open. It's fine.
Okay.
It's not my problem.
You need to get the cone.
All right. Well,
the cone. The cone of infection.
Then, Jeremy, did you want to talk about this other one, or are we good?
Yeah, because I think that Ken would be incredibly freaking jealous about this thing. And at just under $90, it's freaking tempting. It's a 7.5 inch piece of e-paper with 800 by 480 resolution that charges via NFC. So,
no way.
Yeah, because they've made it just to the point. It's got a reasonable refresh rate on it, but the idea is that it's good enough that you can freaking charge it via NFC without a battery. Without the battery. So it's just freaking hilarious. And I'm sort of thinking about picking one of these up because it is sort of an all-in-one thing with a little controller behind it so you can program it. And as sort of a picture shows there, roughly the size of your average iPhone. It just looks amusing as frickin' hell.
Oh yeah,
and
it's two color.
Not a ridiculous price. Yeah, 2 grays.
2 grays, cool.
Yeah,
nice. All right.
So for $88.99, not bad.
And we'll have the links to all of that stuff in the show notes. Well, as if you're on the video version, you've noticed we've just had a special guest join us, but he's not allowed to be on the regular show. So we're going to wrap this up, and we'll say thanks everyone for joining us live. And you're going to not want to miss the post show. So if you're listening to this on demand, make sure you join us live so you can hear what we're about to hear from our very special guest. But thanks everyone. Hope everyone's hanging in there. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you next time.